Middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
Somewhere Europe has to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems.
चुन चुन करके हिसाब लेना ये मेरी फितरत है.
Why should it be a problem if I'm smart enough to have multiple options? You should be admiring me.
भारत झुकने वाला भी नहीं.
The rise of India will be determined by India. It will be determined by our strength, not by the mistakes of others.
The old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Please do like and subscribe and let's get going. Let's get started. See, I was actually reading something about India-Russia relations when because Dr. S. Jaishankar has been visiting, and then Ajit Doval is in China. All that is going on for the preparation of your BRICS summit, all the good stuff. That's when it occurred to me that Pandit Nehru, during his leadership, all was not lost. If you look into it, then Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru has become one of the easiest Indian leaders to criticize. And there are legitimate reasons for that. Whether it was his assessment of China is there, which was catastrophically, I would say, wrong, right? The 1962 war. Then his tenure, his leadership started with the LIC scandal, that is a life insurance corporation, then Jeep scandal, and then after that scandal after scandal after scandal, one way or the other, small big. Then his economic system, it was eventually associated with the license Raj, excessive bureaucracy, and an economic, I would say, system that he created. It was basically, its growth rate at that time, because of that economic system, was very slow, way slower than what India needed. And in fact, around the same time, China was growing way faster than India. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Pandit Nehru got everything right. Okay, but here's the interesting thing though. Okay, not everything was lost during Nehru's leadership, because there are certain important things in those times when India was a very poor country. India was not as powerful, or not nowhere near being powerful as it is today. Uh, I would say that certain important decisions that Pandit Nehru took, I would say his instincts were remarkably good, and India is still benefiting from some of those more than 60 years after his death, right? And I think the best example would be that uh, Boris Johnson just recently, he told a very fascinating story at the Economic Times World Leaders Forum just recently, just a couple of days ago. So Johnson said that shortly before Queen Elizabeth died, he was complaining to her about how difficult it was to persuade India to take a tougher position against Russia. And apparently, Queen immediately remembered a conversation she had with Nehru in 1952. And according to Johnson's recollection, Nehru told her that India will basically be on the side of Russia. And the Queen's response to Johnson decade later was literally, some things never change. And actually, before I move forward, let me actually share that thing real quick, okay? Right here. India will always be on the Russia side, Boris Johnson recalls Elizabeth Nehru conversation. Speaking at the Economic Times World Leaders Forum, the former UK Prime Minister recalled telling Queen Elizabeth II how difficult it was to persuade India to take a tougher line against Russia. And Johnson said that Elizabeth immediately recalled a 1952 conversation with Jawaharlal Nehru, telling him, "Oh, yes, I remember. Nehru said, Your Majesty, India will always basically be on the side of Russia. Some things never change," she said, and they just are. Johnson recalled Queen telling him, adding, "I think we have to go with the historical reality." So yeah, I think that the India-Russia relationship, the foundation of the India-Russia or Soviet Union was laid by Pandit Nehru, and India is still reaping the rewards of that relationship. And I wouldn't say that the following leadership, his successors didn't do anything about it. I mean, I think that uh, if you look at the India-Russia relationship currently, then you find that it has grown after Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, because they have known each other since 2000, when Prime Minister Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat, right? So, but nonetheless, the foundation was laid by Pandit Nehru, and I think he seems to have understood extremely early that India was going to need a durable relationship with Moscow. And during 1950s, I would say he actually started building it. And Nehru visited Soviet Union in say 1955. Later same year, Soviet leader Nikolai, what was his name, Nikolai Bulganin and Nikita Khrushchev, they both came to India. And in fact, Nikita Khrushchev, if you go read his book Nikita, there is a chapter, Nehru and India's Bhilai Steel Plant. Okay, that was established by Pandit Nehru. Okay, so um, this relationship actually did all that, and it started producing actual economic capability. India and the Soviet Union reached agreements under Moscow, under which I would say Moscow would provide India with steel, industrial equipment, mining equipment, all that good stuff. I mean, whatever was needed to actually industrialize India, was all that help was provided by Soviet Union at that time. And even though Nikita Khrushchev, if you read his book, he says that in his memoir that Khrushchev actually he acknowledged something almost embarrassing about Soviet Union itself. He says that our knowledge of India was not only superficial but downright primitive. That's what Nikita Khrushchev said, that they had no knowledge of India. So initially, Soviets barely understood India either, because Soviet Union was a fairly new country. They used to be Baltics there. What was that? I can't even remember. Their history is probably give take 1,000 year old, if that. But as Khrushchev actually he interacted with Nehru, Pandit Nehru, he developed considerable, I would say, respect for him politically, while remaining deeply skeptical of his economic strategy. Nikita Khrushchev was very skeptic about Pandit Nehru's economic ability and his knowledge on these subjects like socialism and socialist economy, all that. And Nikita Khrushchev also said that Nehru proposed road towards improving India's living standards was far too slow. They wanted to do it in a certain way, but Nehru wanted to do it in a different way. Okay, but nonetheless, he got this right. Okay, and the second thing I would say that he got right was non-alignment. I think he saw this coming. I think he had this gut feeling that going with Americans, regardless of whether you get the UNSC or you get this or you get that, he figured that uh, probably that India will ultimately become like South Korea or something, and they will put their bases in India, and then they will use India to their advantage whenever they see it, however they saw fit. Okay, and if say because they were trying to use India for this against Soviet Union, and let's say if he had made this call that yeah, let's go with the United States, let's be on their side, then Soviet Union would have been surrounded, and probably the Cold War would have escalated further. Okay, and probably India would have dealt with a lot more damage. I mean, dealt with lots of damage that we don't know what exactly could have happened, right? So when he took this approach of non-alignment, even though India was virtually aligned with Soviet Union, simply based on the help the Soviet Union provided, uh, but for the world, India was non-aligned country, meaning that we are not aligning with anybody, and that's something that I would say was modified. Its modified version is multipolarity. What is multipolarity? I will give you a brief information on that. Multipolarity is always related to the power, centers of power, the poles of power, whereas multilateralism is related to the institutions that govern that polarity. Okay, the system. So for example, yes, there is a unipolar world, but was a unipolar world, but there were still multilateral institutions, meaning that you are going to work with different things or different entities and systems under one power. That's what the whole thing that's the difference between multilateralism and multipolarity. And when multipolarity came, I think that the multipolarity, the way I see it, is its foundation is in the non-alignment, because to be multipolar, to have multiple centers of powers, you have to first learn to not be aligned to one particular group. You have to only align to your interests. Okay, and not become somebody's ally as such. Okay, that's what non-alignment, basically the intent of non-alignment always was to not to be somebody's ally. Okay, that's the core of it. And then lots of people explain it in a different way, but I believe that Pandit Nehru, his thought process was that non-alignment, meaning that we are not going to be somebody's ally. That's why he said non-alignment, and this is why India always was on Soviet Union's side, or they worked together. But India wasn't Soviet Union's ally either. Okay, now you understand the picture, right? But when Prime Minister Modi came, then he changed all that. He actually, I would say, upgraded it. He said that no, I think this whole non alignment thing is gone. Now we want to go with all alignment. We will be friends with everybody. Wherever we can converge, we will converge. And if divergence can be put in the back burner, we will put those divergence in the back burner. And that was because India wanted to work with the United States. India realized that if you want a faster economic activity, and the same economic activity that I said earlier, that Nikita Khrushchev pointed out, that do it this way, then India will move faster, India will develop faster. But Pandit Nehru's system was a little bit like, okay, no, let's keep everything tight, under control, whatever that was. More of like a micromanagement type thing, okay? And but if you look into when Prime Minister Modi came, what he did, yes, policies are not some fancy things or anything, but he made certain changes, the changes that Pandit Nehru was reluctant to make. Maybe he had his reasons, I don't know. I never knew the man, so I'm just thinking. And look at when my whole point is that when Prime Minister Modi came to power, then how fast India has developed since then. That's the core of it. Okay, so Nikita Khrushchev was right about those things, and uh, and Pandit Nehru, that's the so non-alignment because of non-alignment, he did certain things like CETO, CENTO, all these things. They refused. They did not go in. They didn't become part of any of that gang or group. Look at Pakistan. What happened to Pakistan? Just because Pakistanis thought that they're gonna go and be be an ally of United States, they thought that they will go and get Kashmir and everything else. But guess what happened? Nothing. Right. So that's another thing, right? Non-alignment, India's strategic autonomy. The foundation of India's strategic autonomy comes from non-alignment. And then later on, when Prime Minister Modi and his policies came, then things changed, and then India started to be at the core of every multilateral institution like BRICS, Quad, SCO, you just name it. Okay. And that's second thing. So non-alignment, I think, is the foundation of what is India's policy today. Yes, Pandit Nehru may not have implemented it the right way, but nonetheless, he had good instincts about it. Okay. And uh, he also understood, third thing that he understood was that India could not remain industrially dependent. So this is why he had this dream of building a modern India. Okay. But certain things did not pan out. And this is where Nikita Khrushchev's criticism is actually useful here, when he said that uh, that his whole licensing and all the way he was trying to run the Russian model into India was sort of slow, and it was going to hurt India. But nonetheless, he did work on those things. He Pandit Nehru introduced steel engineering, nuclear technology, scientific manpower. Like Atomic Energy Commission was initially established in 1948. Then 1954, the Department of Atomic Energy was created, and direct in charge was Prime Minister Nehru was there. And this is why, uh, Kennedy, when John F. Kennedy and Pandit Nehru, they met. When Pandit Nehru was invited on a state visit. So John F. Kennedy, he knew that, yeah, India's Atomic Energy Commission and all that actually is under Prime Minister Nehru. So he wrote a letter, and he also said very clearly that, if I mean, in nutshell, that letter said that US will not compromise on national security, so you should not compromise on national security either, so go and do a nuclear test. That's what John F. Kennedy was basically saying. Okay. But Pandit Nehru said, "Oh, we are peace loving and this and that didn't pan out." And I think that he was hinting at that. What John F. Kennedy was hinting at was that China is planning to attack. So if you do the nuclear test, then it will be a deterrent, and nobody will attack you. And I think there were certain blunders, and he took those whole brotherhood thing, Hindi Chini brotherhood thing, all that. He took it literally, little too literally, I would say. Yeah, you should be in good relationship and all that. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But providing the rice and food and all that to the Chinese army that is going to take Tibet, I mean, that is messed up. But nonetheless, all right, I think I just wanted to, share with you guys what exactly I think he did right. Okay, after I was reading all that, and about India Russia relationships and how things have been going all these years, so it came up. So anyways, this is it for this video, guys. I hope you loved it. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys in another video. Take care.